Hi everyone, happy Friday. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about teaching your kids to ride a bike. This is something I haven't had a ton of direct experience with teaching kids how to ride bikes because obviously you can't bring a bike into the occupational therapy clinic very easily. However, I have talked to a lot of parents and consulted with them about how to maybe make this process a little more simple and a little more successful for their kids as they're struggling through trying to teach their kids to ride a bike. So I do have some thoughts on the subject. The first thing that I want to highlight and talk about is just all of the different sensory systems that are at play when a kid is on a bike, or when anyone's on a bike, really. So the first component is a vestibular component. So the vestibular system helps you to understand every time your head is moving through space. So as a kid is riding a bike, as you're riding a bike, you're going in its linear movement forward, but there's also some head tilting going on. So your head is moving around, and your body is having to understand that and process that information. The vestibular system is also responsible for the bilateral coordination that it requires to pedal, to work the pedals. Okay, so that's a big vestibular system component of this process. There's also a lot of proprioception involved in riding a bike. Your proprioception is your body awareness and being able to understand where your body is in space. And when you're on a bike and your feet are on both pedals, no part of you is touching the ground. And so that requires a lot of brain activity to understand where your body is in space while it's sitting on this bicycle. The proprioceptive system also is responsible for that core strength and the trunk control that it takes to stay on the seat of the bike as it's moving and as it might be wobbling side to side. And there's also a tactile component to riding a bike in that your feet are touching the pedals, and you have to be able to understand and comprehend how your feet are touching the pedals, how hard your feet are touching those pedals, as well as holding onto the handlebars, and then the tactile input from your bottom sitting on the seat. So if we look at the activity with this sensory system lens, we can start to kind of piece together, maybe if a kid is struggling with this process, we can start to think about, well, maybe what components of that are they really struggling with? And then we can work to either increase or decrease the sensory input or the sensory demands of the activity in order to help them be more successful. So a couple different ideas about, how we can do this. So the first thing would be pedaling, working the pedals. So that bilateral coordination with the feet. So kids can start working on this obviously when they're little on a big wheel or a tricycle, and then progress as they get older up to a bicycle with training wheels, and then so on. If your kid might be struggling with this activity, perhaps it's because they don't feel enough tactile input from just their feet sitting on the pedals. So what we could do is develop some sort of contraption or way to kind of strap their feet in, and that might help their feet to stay in the same spot, to stay on those pedals, and then they might be more successful in making that pedal go around and around and doing that movement. So it might not be the movement that's the problem. It might just be that they don't have enough tactile input to understand where their feet are and to keep their feet on the pedals in such a way that they need to in order to work the pedals. Does that make sense? So in addition to that, maybe on their seat. So I have had kids that have had trouble just sitting on the seat of a bicycle. Either it's uncomfortable or they just don't ever quite get the trunk control that they need in order to stay seated on that bicycle in order to ride a bike. So we can play around with that a little bit. Find a bigger seat. They do make seats that have kind of a little back to them. So there's just an increase in that tactile input. And so that increase in tactile input can then decrease the demands on the proprioceptive system as it's trying to figure out where the body is in space and how to maintain that trunk control while they're on the bike. Hopefully that makes sense. So those are just some of the things that I have seen be successful for kids that might be struggling with riding a bike. the other thing that I've seen successful and recently has been, we've all seen these balance bikes that are out, right? So the point of a balance bike is to help your kid work on the balance that it requires to stay on a bicycle without having to do the pedaling motion in conjunction with that. So it's the idea is work on the balance first, and then once the balance is there, add in the pedals, and they can be more successful. So I think balance bikes are great, but if you can afford or don't want to go out and buy a whole specific balance bike, you can actually probably take the pedals off of your bike or off of your kid's bike and have them treat their bike just like a balance bike would work, and get that feel of the balance and the core strength and all of that before you add the pedals back on, and then they can successfully ride, hopefully. So that is a great option, and I've actually had a friend recently do this with her son, and he was very successful a couple weeks ago in learning how to ride his bike without training wheels, because he was able to take the pedals off of the bike and work on it that way. So if you're listening, hi Donnie, good job. I'm very proud of you. And yeah, that's awesome. So those are my thoughts for today. Again, it's just kind of looking at riding a bike with kind of a different lens. And so this is what occupational therapists pride ourselves on, is being able to look at tasks and kind of break down all the different components of those tasks in order to problem solve maybe where some struggles might be, and how we can fix that and make kiddos more successful in what they're doing. So hopefully this helps. Again, if you have any specific questions, please leave them in the comments. Otherwise, I hope you all have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.